So thank you all for being here. And I am going to ask Miss Vera, if you would, to go ahead and kick us off by saying a little bit about who you are, who you're caring for, and if you know what kind of dementia your person is living with.
Okay, I'm Vera Berry, and I'm caring for my husband that has frontal
Frontal
dementia
temporal?
for it's been about 2 years, if
2
not
years.
more. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm Jim Thornton. I'm caring for my wife. I'm not certain the specific type she has. Just I guess the notes say major cognitive disorder, but I think it's multiple types.
It doesn't seem like it's just one particular kind. It
Correct.
seems like it's complicated.
Yes.
Okay. And Mary?
I am supportive of my brother, my older brother, and his daughter, my niece. She's an only child, and her mother, my sister-in-law, is, and they live in Estero, Florida. And she's 79, and I believe, and she did have a stroke in the past. I believe it's vascular.
Yes. So you're doing some long distance care support.
It's a long distance care, and it's rather, it requires lots of emotional support and
Okay.
also talking about what to do.
Okay.
Helping to strategize.
Yeah. So when we're talking about different dementias, what's your understanding of dementia, Alzheimer's? If you were to hear those two words and what you're coping with, if I were to say, oh, it's a form of dementia, it's Alzheimer's, it's frontal temporal, it's vascular. When you first started off, what did you know about the different types of dementia, if anything?
I think I was not completely understanding all of the different types, but as was explained to me, and it makes most sense, was dementia is an umbrella, and underneath the umbrella may be several types, and so the overarching diagnosis would be dementia, and then beneath that, subsets of that, which could include Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And so your wife, it looks like, has a complicating feature in that she has some features of one dementia and then another, and then maybe even a third.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So you don't have like a clean profile,
No.
but everything that she has sort of fits under the umbrella.
Yeah, well, in her case, she asked specifically, what kind do I have? And at the memory care clinic, they provided a sheet in which they circled 3 types.
Ah,
So we don't know if it's a third of this, a half
Yeah,
of
well, we
this,
got a
et cetera,
mix.
et cetera.
So she's super curious, though.
Yes,
Is
very much.
She really wants to be involved in understanding what's happening to herself.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And has that been something that you've supported as well?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And are you as curious, or is she the one driving the curiosity?
I'm the curious guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a learner.
A learner by nature.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And Vera, how about your husband? You said frontal temporal.
Mm-hmm.
What was your appreciation of dementia before this started for you?
Well, I was trying to with the dementia, and then I had Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, does he have dementia? Is dementia Alzheimer, or do you get Alzheimer first and dementia? So
You were like,
I
what's
was
going on
like
here?
kind of confused. So as I
Yeah.
go on, with him, and he doesn't know that he has dementia.
So he's unaware that he has the
Yeah,
changes
yeah,
he has.
Yeah. So
And his changes are they more related to language or more related to thinking skills and
thinking skills.
sort of like
Yeah.
sequencing and problem solving
Mhm.
and making choices that are consistent with
Yeah, he thinks that what he does is right. Like I try to tell him, this is not where it goes. No, yes, it does. You're wrong. So it's just him thinking.
And we're going to get more into that one in just a few minutes, then,
Yeah,
Vera. But
yeah.
yeah. So he thinks he knows things and he thinks he's right and he thinks it goes a certain way. So it's not like he doesn't know and he's not confused. He knows what he's doing, but then he doesn't
But
get it. Or is
I
it-
take it more as him being confused because he really doesn't know.
yeah,
what
but
he's
does he
doing.
think he doesn't know?
Yeah, well, yeah. He thinks he knows.
Uh-huh.
You know.
So
and-
how's it work when you point it out that he's wrong?
it gets angry,
Oh,
you know.
yeah.
So it's
Hmm.
like you're wrong, you know. You're the one that has,
Yeah.
you know. He
Yeah,
tells me
yeah.
I have dementia.
Uh,
Okay.
okay, so there's sometimes he gets so frustrated with you, he
Yeah.
figures you're the one that's got the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just learned to agree with him.
Mhm. Were you
Figure.
familiar with the words dementia, Alzheimer's, frontal temporal dementia, Lewy body dementia before you got on this road with your husband?
No,
No.
was not familiar with it at all. And
Yeah.
it's well, you know, when the doctors explained it to me, the front to look
Mm-hmm.
because he had in the beginning he had like a stroke, you
Oh,
know,
so there was
and
a
then they
stroke involved?
say it wasn't a stroke, it was a seizure. So this is kind of like what brought it on, I guess, you know.
So trying to figure out how did all this actually get started?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
uh,
And Mary, for your
Sister-in-law.
sister-in-laws, yeah, your sister-in-law.
She would not say that she has dementia, so she wouldn't answer the question the way you've asked it.
Yeah, so she
like,
doesn't
I don't
have
have
dementia. I'm
and
fine.
so I'm not
Yeah.
sure why you're asking me this
Right.
question.
Okay. So no awareness.
Yeah, and
Okay.
well, um, a very heavy denial and anger. So basically, her problem in life is my brother is a horrible human being, and
Okay.
her daughter is ungrateful, and
Okay.
they just don't treat her properly, and then it escalates from there
Right.
to calling the police and
Okay. So that's a lot. I mean, those symptoms are consistent with
Yeah.
a frontal lobe involvement.
I agree,
Yeah.
which is why it's sort of confusing.
Yeah.
I'm
So
familiar. I mean, I work in the business with older adults and have some familiarity, and I've been sort of trying to figure because she does have visual hallucinations.
oh, she does. Okay.
Yes.
So then
Not audio, but visual.
well, yeah, so when you start putting puzzle pieces together, so
Yeah.
you go
And
Lewy
paranoia,
body, some
yeah.
Lewy body involvement, plus
Yeah.
some front of the
So-
brain involvement, and maybe a little stroke that she's had.
And the stroke was, she was 60. It was some time
Yeah.
ago, but
Yeah, 5 to 20 years after.
and it was very difficult. We've had a very difficult time
Yeah, it sounds
getting
like.
any diagnosis. We've had a very difficult time getting her to agree to go to a doctor and will not allow other people to be involved with the process.
So when you got the idea of the different symptoms that your folks were having, did understanding the symptoms help you start to manage how to give support and care differently? Or are you still in the process of figuring all that out?
I think because there was a family history
Uh-huh.
with her grandmother,
Okay.
and I was, I was very much over to their house and observing. The grandmother lived in the home,
Okay.
so I was able to observe her and relate the symptoms. Kind of, I had a little history with it.
Yeah. So an
And
awareness.
and an awareness of it as well. So I think further, my dad had dementia. He lived to be 93 years old, but the last, say, 7 or 8 years,
Okay.
he had no, I don't think he really knew who he was.
Okay.
He certainly didn't know who I was. And when I would go visit him, he was in Alabama, I'm in Virginia. He would sometimes think I was his brother or his preacher or his, and occasionally he would recognize me as his son.
His son.
So I've had some history, family history with
More
the-
like, that sounds more like an Alzheimer's type of
yes,
condition.
yes,
And your wife was not matching up with that exactly, but matched more her grandmother's experience?
yes,
Or,
yes.
but then
very-
not exactly
very
that
much,
either.
but-
yeah.
but enough to know I knew something was wrong fairly early. You know.
How old was she with first symptoms?
Well, she is 75 now, so, and I think she had a formal diagnosis, perhaps, I'll get this wrong, but maybe about 4 years ago.
Okay.
So I first noticed symptoms maybe 5 years ago, give or take.
All right. So fairly young.
Yes,
I mean, definitely fairly young.
yes.
And your husband fairly young?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
And
he's 73, and I said in 2 years to say 70, 71.
yeah,
Yeah.
minimally, probably some things before, but not necessarily noticeable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you look at the condition of dementia and you look at other things that happen, does anybody in the group have someone that also, you've mentioned hallucinations, you've mentioned a seizure, you mentioned a stroke as well, health conditions like anxiety, depression, diabetes, hypertension, any of those things, and how, like for your, I'm going to start with you, Jim, and then switch out. Whether you try to treat with medication or you're going in for treatments or they're supposed to do X, Y, or Z regularly in order to manage those conditions, how's that work for you?
Well, I think, you know, my wife was anxious pre-dementia
Okay.
and a certain amount of depression. If you're living, you're going to have some anxiety and some depression. You just are. So so there was a little bit of that, and then add on top of that the diagnosis of dementia, which further complicates things. And frankly, they kind of get in each other's way. And you say, is this anxiety, depression? Is this dementia? And so uh, what we wound up doing is going to a neurologist, going through the testing, and then relying on medications for each type of each symptom, if you will. And she's on several medications, which by itself is a little bit of a balancing act, and a little bit of what is medicine as a science and an art. It's more art than I think science in some cases. So in this case, you know, we've had physical or counseling, you know, separate from all of this, which helped, but to a point. I think with counseling, you have to have reasoning, okay? And that because of the ability to lose kind of the attribute of reasoning makes it difficult to have counseling. Counseling becomes more social than necessarily therapeutic.
Is there value in that or not? Did it,
To a
was it, is it
point.
valuable to your wife
Yes,
and you
there
or
there
not?
is value in that. The interacting with other people, engaging, and so yeah, I do think there's value in it, but don't expect huge
Therapeutic
results.
outcome that is going to be recovery or making it go away.
Yes,
But
I mean the kind of the best you can hope is to slow progression,
yeah,
and also along the ride, making sure the quality of life is as best as it
okay.
can be
So
under the circumstances.
yeah. And it sounds as though your wife still likes to actively participate in her own life and treatment and care. And
Yeah, I think in her case, because she is very cognizant of her decline and progression, makes it doubly hard,
yeah.
which then feeds the anxiety and depression, and you get in somewhat of
A loop.
a vicious cycle of
Are there
things.
things that bring her out of that cycle that you've consistently or inconsistently been able to use? Or
I think my daughter happens to be local and grandkids, and making those we're able to see them fairly frequently. She cheers up with that.
okay.
Just getting her out of the house is good, and those sorts of things. So, but occasionally she will get into a funk, and
Yeah.
and only time will sometimes bring that out, and you just gotta hang on.
Okay. And so I'm gonna hold the mirror up. Do you ever get in a funk in that same way?
Of course I do.
Oh, and what does it take to get you out?
Time and prayer. And so I lose my patience, but I count to 20, and it's okay.
What if
It's
you get to
better.
50? Is that better? No.
I never get to fit. If you ever get to 50, you need to do something else. Okay?
I wouldn't
You need
disagree.
to do something else. 20 is the number.
20 is good enough.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Vera, how about for you and things that seem to, with this condition, have you had any acute episodes of illness that you've had to try to sort out? Like sometimes urinary tract infections or getting the flu or having a blood pressure problem or having a stroke. Have you ever had any of that since the diagnosis yet or not yet?
Well, he had a urinary tract infection one time.
How
Those
did
are
you
the-
figure that out?
Because he kept saying, "Oh, it hurts when I go."
Oh,
You
so
know.
he was able to
Yeah,
give you
yeah.
accurate
He
symptoms
lets
of
me
what's
know,
not right.
I got to try to tell him. I said, "Are you okay? Are you hurting?" Someone have to ask him, "Are you
Yeah.
hurting?" Because he won't tell me.
Was he irritable? What made you ask? So I'm trying to figure out what got you
Because
that place of being curious.
I noticed like when he went to the bathroom, he was like, really like straining, or when
Okay.
he came back. So I said, "Well, are you okay?" I said, because I know he doesn't drink a lot of water, so I know for one that's number one problem. And then he says, "Well, it kind of burns." So I said, "Well, we'll go to the doctor." And if I say, let's go to the doctor, he's up for that because
Oh, he is? Okay.
yeah, because
All
he feels that I know what I'm talking about. So he'll go to the doctor. It's just like when, I try to figure out that what was wrong with him. We was driving one day and it was off, his driving was off, and I made an appointment for the doctor, and that's when
So
we
he's
went to the
agreeable.
neurologist.
So
Yeah.
you don't get a lot of pushback when it's things like that,
Mm-hmm.
making choices and decisions about health and well-being. You're sort of the one in charge. Is that because
Yes.
of a previous career or just your relationship?
Just the relationship.
Just the
50,
relationship. Well,
53
you never
years of
know.
marriage.
Sometimes-
It's
Okay,
just,
well, I'm not sure that would work with my husband.
He comes to me and says, "You take care of me really good. I'm glad you
Okay.
keep me clean, because a lot of times I have to,
You help with things.
help him a lot.
Because sequencing, he doesn't know the next step of what to do. And he is sort of aware that he gets lost in things. And that's that frontal temporal so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
I build on that
Yeah.
just a minute? We went through a really rough patch about, I want to say, a month ago. I thought she had kind of gone off the cliff,
Uh-huh.
and for 2 weeks, and it was very rough. I mean, to the point.
20 wasn't enough.
I actually made an appointment with Denise and wanted to talk to her about it and all that kind of stuff. Come to find out, because a lot of times in older people, they may not experience specific symptoms, but come to find out after questioning her quite a bit, come to find out it appeared that maybe she had a UTI. We went and had testing done, and she did confirm that, and got on a series of antibiotics, and which cleared it up, and it was like a miracle happened.
night.
It was unbelievable. And so, and I'm very sensitive to things. I'm very observant, but that one slipped by me for a while. And so I guess the message is just be sensitive to issues and
Sudden change.
exactly. And I will tell you, in the elderly, you don't have to worry about getting an appointment. If you say they are very sensitive to UTI, getting
You'll get
people
in.
in there and getting it checked out. So,
And just get it checked.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to build on
Yeah,
Vera's
no,
point
it's
there.
it's a good point, because as a care partner, that you're now the one who has to sometimes pick up on the cues because not getting it. Mary?
Yeah, definitely. My sister-in-law, chronic UTIs, and to the point, and doesn't like to take medication and is gets off and does take insulin, and actually it was a healthcare situation that sort of moved us to a new level. So because it required some outside people coming in,
Yeah.
and we were able to, without going into lots of details, the escalation between my brother and my sister-in-law. I was really
Because
we
she
were all
already
getting, I
was
was
having the
worried
belief that he was doing things to cause harm,
that somebody was going
going
to
to get hurt. How are you building in advanced directives and decision making and planning for future choices and decisions? Sandy's was certainly beyond and above and quick. But for you all, we'll come back to Sandy because that's definitely, wow, you got to have some plans in place and you don't even know you're going to need them until you're there almost. But thinking ahead toward life choices, where will I live? What are we going to do? Home care? Are we going to try to find a space and a place? Have we started looking? Are we thinking we can handle this from start to finish? We won't need anybody. What's happening and what's your plans? What have you done so far?
Well, we've had advanced planning directives for some time.
For each other?
Yes, correct. And all DNRs and all the usual
Was that
stuff.
before the dementia even?
Yes,
Okay, so you'd already done a lot of that.
always. And we haven't changed it to date.
Oh, so she's still your healthcare power of attorney?
Yes.
Oh, how do you think that'll work, Jim?
Um,
Depossess.
it's not going to work.
Yeah, I'm being a little bit of a devil's advocate here to say,
Yes.
gee, Jim, I'm really glad you did that in advance, but I've got to ask.
Since you asked, I'll go relook at it. But
Would you have
we've
done
done
that right
no.
away?
Say
If
again?
would you have done that at this point if I hadn't have just said, "Oh, is she still your healthcare power of attorney?"
Probably not.
Yeah, why not?
Um, I don't know why.
Because
I,
where are you focused, Jim?
exactly. I mean, I'm be more concerned about making decisions, financial decisions, and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I probably need to look at that, which would cause me then to look at the all the aspects of it. But I haven't quite gotten there yet. And as far as long term, she and I have talked about it, and I'm going to care for her as long as possible in the home.
And I absolutely can see that that is going to be the case. The question is, where will and what will you have planned when you've done it as long as you can do it? And you got to come up with it. Have you talked about where and what if that were to advance?
We have talked about it and done some casual looking,
Good work.
but nothing extreme because of her wishes, which is I'd like to stay as close as I can. I've taken that very seriously and haven't explored deeply.
Okay.
Have done some casual
Okay.
looking, okay,
Yeah.
but nothing to alarm her. Nothing,
Yeah.
I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you one more question. And that is, given where she's at in her dementia, are you to the place where you need another healthcare decision maker for yourself, given where she is? Or do you still think she could do that right now? Or is that beyond where she would be right now?
I don't think she could do it. Okay. I think right now I would lean toward yes, 60%, maybe like that. But as time goes on, it's going to be less and less and less.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate in that my daughter lives locally, and if something should happen, she would be immediately
up.
there to assist the wife in decision making and things of that nature. So I don't feel like that
It would be
I'm
awful
alone.
right away.
I'm
You're not
alone.
alone by yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, because that's not a lot of people think about both sides of it. And that's why I wanted to tease and pick a little bit on that.
You can
'cause-
pick on me. It's okay. It's all right.
So Vera, what about you and your husband? I know you have a daughter involved in supporting.
Yes, my daughter, she is excellent. I mean, I couldn't get through this without her because she's, well, I say she makes the decisions and as far as, his medicine and doctor's appointment and,
So you're
stay
sharing
up
the
on top
load.
of that. Yeah.
Have you had thoughts about adding any other team members on, or is it just going to be you two?
Well, I have a son, he gets involved, and my husband's sisters and brothers, they're in New York. He talks to them every day, and when he gets like anxious or, just get out of hand and won't listen to me, he just want to do what he want to do, I could call his younger sister and she'll talk to him, but it got to a point where he doesn't even listen to her now. So, but his brothers and sisters, the family knows. So,
Do you have other team members not in the family, like any other local services that you're using?
yes, we go to a lot of the memory cafes.
cafes,
We go to counseling.
Okay.
Me myself also, I started counseling too. Just trying to keep up my strength to
Uh-huh.
take care of him.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And like my sister or my daughter, sorry, was trying to decide putting him in a facility or something.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
That
So,
conversation's a really hard
yeah.
conversation. Do you all have advanced directives individually?
Yes.
Okay, so you've done
been at
that
there.
part. We can talk about the end of life, but how do we live our life is much more difficult in many ways to work through.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that Sandy didn't have much of a plan at
No,
all.
I think that the watchword would be denial with both my brother and his wife, and I love him dearly.
So
And that
I'm going to give you a
means-
new word
Yeah,
and see what you think of it. I think they're really grieving.
they are.
They're
yeah,
grieving a lot the changes that they're having to live
Yeah,
with. And
yeah.
that means
Yeah,
denial is just part of grieving.
And
And
I
they
think-
really can't
yeah.
accept this is my life now.
He,
And, yeah,
they,
or
what-
different.
They are now because this is. There's been a slide for probably a good 10 years. From,
Okay.
But what goes along with that, it would not be preparing financially for it. This is.
Yeah.
It's a real object lesson, and it's breaking my heart, and I don't know what to do about this. But my niece and my brother actually had to go get guardianship because my sister-in-law doesn't have a great deal of money, but any money she
Yeah,
had,
so the
we couldn't
grief for
have
her
access
is
to.
not just denial. She
Yeah.
also has anger
Oh, lots.
and a lot of bargaining that she's trying to do trying to get her life back.
Yeah, but
So
it's,
you're
yeah,
describing the grieving process really
Yeah.
well, and she's not gotten to acceptance or
Yeah.
no.
So
Yeah.
so my niece and my brother
Yeah.
have been putting the bill,
Ouch.
and
yeah.
but even there's, wanting to get approval to sell something,
Yeah.
so he
Ouch.
could have a little more money.
Yeah, so that there
to
would be
take care
funds
of
to
her.
take care of her.
And, there,
And that's it's just a
and
very
that-
complicated.
And literally, we are. There is, and of course, they wanted to be the guardian, and
Mhm.
that was not acceptable. So they have a third party,
They have an ad
as a
litem, guardian ad litem.
Mhm.
And when people
but
are
work closely with this
Well, yeah.
person.
So, I mean, the challenge is if a person doesn't know they have change and they think they're fine,
Mm-hmm.
and we're moving forward and decisions have to be made and they haven't really been made in advance, and people are grieving all of this, and it's really in a difficult place.
Yeah.
If we haven't figured out how to come together and do something, there are lots of really hard decisions,
Yeah.
and guardianship is one of the worst to have to work through
Mhm.
to find the support you need.
Mhm.
So each of you has traveled a different journey
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, and yet you've all ended up in spaces where you're trying to figure out what comes next. How do I do this next piece? Although you're nowhere near the end of the journey of where you're at and where you're going to end up.
Mhm.
When you think of that and you think about advance, have you thought about the very end of what life might be like and what might be involved, or are you staying back from that right now? And that's either one is fine. It's just a curiosity to help other people who are in this place of you're in the middle of the disease. Are you looking ahead and saying, for their sake, I hope it's short, or I hope that we get as long as we can, or when this happens, maybe that'll be the sign. Where are you all with that?
I think that I tend to take things a day at a time.
Okay.
I tend not to think about, focus too much on uh, the end, if you will, I tend to focus on the here and now
What's
and
happening,
how I can
Mhm.
manage that.
Yep.
I'm probably not going to be able to manage when the end happens,
Mm.
whatever the end is.
Mhm.
So I tend to try to manage what I can.
Yeah.
And I don't, and I'm, we're very religious people,
Mhm.
so
Strong
I
faith.
tell her, you know where you're going,
Yep.
and it's all good,
Yeah.
and that helps.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. For you.
Yes.
Vera?
I'm like that. I'm just taking it one day at a time.
One day at a time.
And I'm just, religion too like that. I just ask God to give me the grace and the strength to take it one day at a time. And what comes next, my daughter and I will deal with it,
Do you have a thought that glancing ahead and looking at what might be in the cards, like this percent of folks have a hip fracture and this is what happens. People have trouble swallowing. And if is that helpful to hear those words, or is it too scary? You don't want to hear those words. That those are sometimes you'll be asked to make decisions about this. And if you've not ever heard of it and realized that dementia ultimately will affect the very basics of staying alive.
I've I have studied all the material. All the
So
material,
you're a
not all the
learner.
materials. I'm a learner, and so I have studied on it, and I believe knowledge is power, and so I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
What happens, happens,
Yeah.
and if it does, we're going to do the
We'll
best
figure it
we
out
can
day
with
at a
it
time.
and manage it when it comes, and when and if it comes,
Okay.
and if it comes, um, that perhaps it's likely. So we'll pray that it doesn't, but if it does, then we deal with it.
Then you'll deal with it. And you've
Yes.
had that in your back pocket. You have done a looking ahead. Now you can
Yes.
leave it alone and just move into the day.
Yes, and I do think it is important also to be cognizant of changes. Okay, examples the UTI
Yeah,
thing, and
exactly.
et cetera, and when to do something, and when to say,
It
bad
is what it
day,
is.
bad
Yeah.
day. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think about this kind of stuff all the time. It's part of my nature. I don't know. I worry about it though. With my brother, I worry about the effect it's having on him. It's beating him down. I worry about what will, because I'm worried about Sandy ending up in a place that maybe she's never wanted to be, and it was completely out of character for her.
Right.
And I also recognize I think this is an interesting observation, but not everybody has the caregiver personality.
Yep.
And because of the history between her daughter and her, I think it would be, and her daughter knows this, is very, very smart and very capable, knows this would be pretty destructive for her to
Not
bring
being
her
her
into the
care.
house.
Yeah, not
which
try to
would save a
be
bunch of money.
right, but it's not a good match.
It's not.
And as the symptoms of the disease unfold,
Yeah.
having your brother try to be
Yeah.
the caregiver doesn't work.
It may ultimately happen.
May, but not
and-
right now.
And he's always been willing to be there through
Yeah.
the whole thing, but of course
It
she
just
didn't want
doesn't
him
work.
to be.
It doesn't work. Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes two.
Yeah.
To tangle or to
does.
tango, and that's the
Yeah.
challenge. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of a big question mark. And
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I want to say thank you to all three of you for sharing so much of yourselves and your story and the challenges, but also the moments that work and how you've done that, because that's our goal, is to help other people find more of those moments with less of the challenge. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.